talking about a few different subjects. Yes,
all
people,
right, cool.
yes, people. Black Eyes TV is back once again. We live. Yeah, UK, USA link up. Team Osiris Overview. Yeah, we got the team in the house. We got brother NGOZI. We got KHONSU. Got my brother Terry. And sorry, brother, remind us of your name.
KHONSU.
Yeah, join
Nah, this is Khufu Makaru.
Khufu Makaru. That's all. Yeah, if you didn't know, get to know people. And today we're just gonna be taking it easy, discussing a few different subject matters that have been floating around the community at the moment, the conscious community that is. Yeah, just touching base. But before we get into that, let me just let my co-host, Mr. Riggs, say hi up to the people. Big them up, big them up.
Greetings, everybody. As you know, I've been away, just got back not long ago. Little bits of here and there and a little bits of drama here and there. But Africa is a good place to go. If you have the opportunity, get yourself over there. As I'll say today, just wanted to put this out into the public, is that there is an African Liberations this weekend, and if you are interested in Professor Smalls, he will be in London this week, which he'll be doing an event this Friday at the Mad Hat Centre. So if you are interested in Professor Smalls and his historical information, he's a person to listen to as an elder, and many more others that will be coming. A woman called Belo, she's from Haiti, who's going to be coming down for this Pan-African event for African liberation. So look out for this space, look out for this time, and you will see the footages and the information. I'll pass it on.
That's all. Well, as I said, today it's a loose show. We're going to cover a few different subject matters as we go by. First of all, let's start with the team. Like, why don't you give us a catch up, starting with NGOZI and KHONSU? What's been going on? We ain't seen you for a hot minute. We see you in the back chat, enough doing your thing, you know. But tell us what's been happening for you guys.
Man, overall, it's been life. Living and taking care of business. We always bear witness. Could you guys hear me?
Yeah.
We always bear witness to the events, and we keep in contact or keep in touch with the different situations that goes on in the community. But we're under the code. A lot of stuff won't be televised. So what we do, we're just a witness of all the things that go in and out or goes on and off. So we're always there, even if it appears as if we're not. We're closely near, always active, even if it appears as if we're not active. So really just doing what we've been doing. We still do shows, we still build, but we're not doing it for fans or for attention or for to stand out to say I know more than the next. We honestly do and love what we do for real, or we do and love what we teach for real. It's not for credibility or none of that. So we're always around, and we are involved with much more things than what people think. We play a major role in a lot of the events and the mindsets of people that goes on in the so-called conscious community. So you see NGOZI, Khufu, and KHONSU, you can hear it through certain people's words and certain things that they say. So where that hand is directing everything. So we're still here doing our thing. Team Osiris on the horizon.
No doubt. Real information. Brother KHONSU, you there, brother?
Yes, sir. I mean, NGOZI, NGOZI pretty much summed it up. We've been close yet far, and that's purposeful. We did that on purpose. We see what we need to see. We appreciate, the people that have been loyal to Team Osiris, that constantly come to us for information, and we share information, and we get information from people who follow us, So everything's been cool, bro. We just been doing our thing and, taking it easy.
No doubt, no doubt. And brother Khufu, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Peace, Lord.
That's all. Speak to us, brother. This is the first time that you've graced the platform and the first time me and you have personally spoken. So again, introduce yourself to the family. Let them know who you are, what you do. Let me before we kick off this dialogue.
Yeah, I'm Khufu Makaru. These are my brothers, Amir Kamada, brother KHONSU, Shezmore Moon. And, you know, you're my distant relatives over there in the UK. And, you know, we trying to put them on black ice if they don't know how to act right. So, you know, we just coming with that knowledge and wisdom that we was able to gather through our experience and our trials and tribulations. So, you know, just trying to connect, man, worldwide, build with the fam.
No doubt, no doubt. Most definitely. All right. So without further ado, let's kick straight off. Yeah, by dealing with some of the loose talk, first of all, of the community. Before we get into some hard facts, yeah. Let me get your opinion on some of the conversations that's been floating around. I don't know whether you use like, well, I know we was just talking about with KHONSU earlier about this Garfield Shaka Most Jabari debate on slavery. I know that was a few weeks ago or a month ago now when it first started. But what's you lot take on it? We know Garfield and Jabari have given their answer. We're yet to hear something definite from Shaka Most, but what you guys take on that discussion so far? And again, for anyone who doesn't remember, the main question was, have black people enslaved other black people to the same levels and extents that we know from the transatlantic slave trade, you know, chattel slavery to that extent? So, you know, what's you guys' opinion on that?
Well, we first off, we have to study Europeans. Europeans had a certain method and way of doing things in Europe. Chattel slavery is something that they use to the extreme. This is their method. This is their way of doing things. If you study Europeans before they came in contact with sub-Saharan Africans, they used to do it to one another. People that was classified or considered witches, they used to tie them up to horses and rip their bodies apart, beat and torture. This is their way of doing things. No Africans didn't have chattel slavery to the extreme the way Europeans have chattel slavery. It doesn't even compare and contrast. But when we talk about did Africans own Africans or Africans have slaves, whether they was indentured servants or not, if a person is being taken against their will or a person is being taken against a fellow tribe, a different tribesman, it's still wrong. And I'm sure these people that were in bondage disagree with the people that they were enslaved to, or that they were being oppressed by. You know, wrong is wrong, right is right. So no, it was not to the extremity the way Europeans did it in chattel slavery. As I said, you're taking you out of the country or taking you from out of the continent and importing you to another and raping and torturing. But if you study the people on the continent, you know, the Yoruba, the Igbo, the different Somali clans, they war with each other and they slaughter each other, and everything ain't friendly. You know, if you want to be technical, the Yoruba are out with the Hausa against the Igbo in certain cases. You got the different Mahan tribes and different clans in the Somali groups, the different clans in the Ethiopian and Eritrean groups. So, I mean, no Africans didn't treat each other in the level of brute, but they did. But when it comes to Kemet just didn't own Mediterranean European slaves, because we got to understand Mediterranean Europeans are not Nordic Western Europeans or the Britons. This is a whole nother clade of people that took you. The Egyptians was important people from near the Caucasus, the Georgian area, Syrian areas, and they also had people that was from Sudan. You see it on the wall where they chained up. You feel what I'm saying? They didn't see things from a racial standard the way we see things today. So if we're going to say the Europeans enslaved so-called Europeans, it wasn't Europeans in the sense of the Nordic British or Scandinavian groups that enslaved you and me. It was Mediterranean and Caucasus, Georgian, West Eurasian groups of people, and they also enslaved Nubians. You know, study the text, study the literature, study the walls, look at the walls. You see Nubians chained up with a brown-skinned Egyptian just as brown as him. And you also see Syrians chained up. So we can't play the role like, you know, they seen reality the way you see reality today from the modern social construct of race that was created or invented in the 1700s. Let's be for real when it comes to this thing that we call race from a modern social constructive thing. So I think that what they doing, all of them are wrong to me because they're not telling the complete truth. You know what I'm saying? I think all of them wrong because if you're not going to tell the complete truth and talk about how people thought back then compared to how people think today, and also label and show the proof of who is who, you cannot compare a Mediterranean European from the Cretan area or sea people or people from the Caucasus area, Albanians or Armenian groups from the Georgian area to a British, Frank or French or the Scandinavian or Western Eurasian or Germanic tribes that did the thing that they did to you. You can't compare and contrast. It doesn't make sense. So let's be truthful about the groups of people that the Egyptians had in bondage. And let's be truthful of the level of slavery and the content of slavery, the methods that they was using and holding people hostage. Let's be for real, for real.
No doubt, no doubt. KHONSU, what's your take, brother?
Yeah, you know, pretty much that's, you know, chattel slavery is the caveat in this whole conversation between Amos and Garfield and Jabari. And chattel slavery is a different system of slavery. So we tend to overlay the two, and that's a totally different type of culture when it comes to that type of slavery, different type of culture adaptation when it comes to chattel slavery. That was something that was done for economic purposes, not more so inheritable purposes. Whereas in Africa, you did have generational slavery, and it was actually not frowned upon the way that it is now. And in some areas, it was customary. So it's a misunderstanding socially because we're caught up in socialism. The socialist movement changes our ability to perceive our cultural awareness because of the politics involved in socialism and the way that we're steered politically when it comes to our social capital. So it's real important that we do a little bit more history on slavery. I think that question that was posed was a little bit vague, and it should have been a little bit more descriptive.
And my brother Kufu, what's your opinion on this?
Well, I haven't had a chance to hear both sides of. I kind of just mostly study and focus on what the team got going on. But if you're asking about Garfield and what they saying, or you just asking in general?
Yeah, in general about what they're saying about their viewpoints on it. And again, you know what, I was amiss because they were talking about I think whether or not black people enslaved white people first. That was part of the question as well. So yeah, I mean, you can respond to that part as well.
Well, I would say that they didn't view themselves back then as being black or white. So they, that's contextual. So they would just think that they're at war with somebody from this area and vice versa. But it wasn't based on race at all. But they had what the other brothers said. They had their little tribal things, and taking people up. People have always been taking people. People used to when those hunter-gatherers started becoming agriculturalists, and they started having storehouses of grain. Yeah, I thought you dropped. But when they started having those storehouses of grain, those people who were still nomadic, they was running up in them storehouses taking that grain. They was like, yo, we taking it. And men was running up on other men taking women, large groups of women. I think that's really like the nature. That's an aspect of nature that we probably have yet to codify. Like things in nature do that all the time. So we're still an aspect of nature. So yes, they did it. Now, have they done it in a way as European? No one has done it the way the European. They another level.
And not to mention, if you study Roman slaves and Greek slaves, they wasn't as brutal as the Anglos and the Saxons or the Britons or the Portuguese. They wasn't to the extreme like that. In Rome, you was able to go fight your way up the ropes and become a Roman citizen. Romans had African slaves. They had all types of slaves. So it wasn't to the Mediterranean Europeans wasn't like the Nordic or Germanic tribes in the north. Let's be honest if we study European history and culture, So it wasn't a racial thing. It's not about if they enslaved white people first. This people have been taking advantage of people since human beings, develop a complex cerebral cortex and was able to disagree with one another. The only time humans been harmonious towards one another when it wasn't a lot of us on the planet, when we were damn near extinct in the beginning. You know what I'm saying? When we were trying to find our way out and in to make the best out of what we could. Once you grew in numbers, you started to create division and separatism and all this other shit. You feel me? And tribalism. So that's the best time in human history where humans were really at peace in our first developmental stages compared to what we are now when you develop the complex cerebral cortex and you start to create the differences, and I see things different than you and you see things different than me, and I need this and I need that, and this is mine and this is yours. I mean, if you study the primate kingdom with chimps and other primates, lesser apes, and you know, and all the history of us from chimps and bonobo chimps and gorillas and lesser apes or whatever, you can see an ego in some type of way. Just study the primate kingdom, study how they function. The dominant ape over the recessive ape, the alpha or the beta. You can see this in the characteristics of the primate kingdom. And in all organisms, it's a territorial base for the dominant species over the one that's more weaker. You see this in all this is what organisms do. But when you study the primate, you can see these characteristics before it becomes more complex with human beings.
But NGOZI, did you want to add to that? I think that you should explain a little bit about the African cultures that were in West Africa when they found those skulls and those bones when they was looking for dinosaurs. A brief breakdown and just compare how they didn't have those defensive wounds and, you know, bashed in heads like the Aztecs had.
Oh yeah, well yeah, the Kepians and the Tenarians in early Niger and the Sahara, they were much more harmonious and friendlier towards one another and wasn't as violent as the Aztecs and the Incas, who, you know, were suicidal and played death sport wars and stuff. These Africans were really harmonious towards one another. But when you get to Jebel Sahaba, you see the differences between, you know, the early Nilo-Saharan groups and the other I classify as Afro-Libertine groups or Cushitic groups with certain specific features. It wasn't to the extreme as these other groups that was outside of Africa. In Niger, they were really just trying to survive. You had the Kepians there first, and then later on the Tenarians. And when they found their fossils, they were buried peacefully in fetal position, and some were even holding hands. You know, it was a more harmonious touch back then compared to now. You know.
I hear you. KHONSU, you got anything to add to that little breakdown? If not, let me
I would be redundant.
No, that's cool. That's cool. All right, let me take the moment just to big up Sapphire in the chat room, Joseph Greer, Bill Gates. We got a question here. What do you guys, what's your take on this Aborigine rhetoric that's going on right now, where we've got this clear divide of people that are subscribing to being in the Americas from time memorial instead of this coming out of Africa theory? What's you guys' opinion on that? Got silence. Who's there?
I'm sorry, KHONSU. Were you asking KHONSU a question, brother?
No, that's for any one of you. This Aborigine rhetoric that's going on right now in the community.
Oh, that's non-cipher, man. That's. I mean, these people. We have to understand. A lot of our people are looking for themselves. You know, slavery in the West or in the diaspora was horrible. So we all trying to find and identify ourselves because our mind's been stripped away. We hate Africa, a lot of us subconsciously. I don't care. I don't even care if you repping RBG on the front line. There's a cognitive dissonance going on. You claim you're African or your blackness when it's beneficial in certain areas, but overall, there's a cognitive dissonance going on amongst us mentally, and it's confusing. So somewhere in a lot of parts of our mind, we hate Africa. So we more acceptable to an Aborigine, a dark-skinned Aborigine, or a brown-skinned native that was over here prior before, you know, us. We are more acceptable to that because it's coming from a place of self-hate, because the oppressor taught you through the accumulation of time that the sub-Saharan African wasn't nothing and you wasn't important. but the native was more adventurous and courageous, and he fought with heart. And the Aborigine was more peaceful and harmonious and organic and natural. So you were always taught that the sub-Saharan African was nothing. So I think that the Aborigine thing that we claim is coming from a place of hate. It's a darkness within us that's coming from a place of hate, and we're in denial of it. And it's really sickening and disgusting for you to look the way you look, and for you to have a specific type of genome that you carry, and you deny it to be your distant relatives, people that descend from you, the Australasians or the Aborigine groups, and Paleo-Mongoloid cousins who crossed the Bering Strait. You know, those are your cousins. Those are your later descendants. You're closer to the original. But he told you, the lesser child or the far distant relative called the pale-skinned European, he told you that the sub-Saharan African was nothing, while he still all the resources and the abundance of gifts that nature provided for our continent in the background, but don't like the people. So I think that the Aborigine thing is coming from self-hate. It's no other way around it. It's coming from self-hate. The niggas hate Africa. That's just what it is.
KHONSU, what's your opinion on that one, brother? Because we was talking before the show about this African-American relationship, African English European black man relationship. What's your take on this Aborigine talk?
Yeah, we have a lot of symptomatic issues psychologically that put us in a position to want to be part of something, anything, when coming from a North American African perspective. Because we don't have a culture, we don't have an identity, we don't have a center or marker of cultural history that defines us. So quite naturally, because we suffer psychologically on a high level, we're going to attach ourselves to anything that gives us any type of stability or consistency, coming from a North American's perspective. And I totally agree with Brother NGOZI. I mean, he broke it down best. You know, we have a psychological detachment with Africa because we are given a false slave narrative of the African diaspora. And we look at Africa as a sign of weakness and slavery as a sign of weakness. And so because we are influenced by socialists in a capitalist environment, you know, we become subject to these kind of things. So I think it's just non-cipher. There's no logical understanding around it. It's purely psychological.
Those definitely self-hate is on the high. Brother Kufu, what's your opinion on this?
Go ahead. What'd you say? You talking to me, right?
Yeah, brother.
Oh yeah,
what's
man.
What's your opinion on this Aborigine rhetoric?
I mean, like the brother said, I mean, no one really knows. I mean, who got here? No one really knows. They could say for sure whether. I mean, because you got some circumstances where, you know, different people take it and run different ways. You got some people say Mansa Musa sent people over here, and Africans was over here. Then you got some people that say we was the dang on Native Americans. So it's. I mean, I have no proof of that. I don't have any information on that, so I can't really roll with that. But I think that if they changed the way they presented the argument, it could hold some title to say, like, if the natives, when a European came over here to America, they exterminated a continent of people. And that's that thing when people was talking about Kanye West is right, we had a choice. I don't see how you got a choice when you got a madman that just exterminated a whole continent of people. And then, like, look, we won't exterminate you if you work for us. So we possibly wouldn't be here if they would have exterminated us, because we don't see no damn Native Americans. When I go to the grocery store, they just not there. And that was like 500 million people plus, because it's a continent, North America, South America, then the islands. I mean, they exterminated all of that. So if we would like to say, okay, since the Native Americans got exterminated, we know the European is a foreigner. He came over here and did that. Then we the only real true natives here because we are original people and genetically. So genetically, we probably could put that argument up if someone could find a way to present the DNA in that manner. But the way it's being presented, I don't think they have a good argument.
Well, let me throw this in the mix here to you guys. Yeah, I don't know whether you subscribe to this, but I mean, going back a certain time date, are we subscribing to the continents being connected? And obviously them slowly moving apart. So what we're classing as America or North America, is that the case, you know, a couple 100,000 years ago, or 20,000 or 30,000 years ago? How does that factor into it when you think of the argument?
When it comes to plate tectonics, 300 million to 65 million years ago, before the continentals drift and split, our species didn't exist yet. You know, you're talking about 300 million years ago when you had Pangea, and it started splitting completely around 65 million years ago. When you look up plate tectonics or continental splitting, we didn't exist yet at that time. You know what I'm saying? We didn't exist. So there was no Homo sapien sapien or no hominid, from Australopithecus afarensis to Ardipithecus or any group of hominids within a mammalia kingdom, a mammalia family, didn't exist, you know, when Pangea exists, you know, at that time period. So no, when the continents were splitting, we didn't exist. Now, when it comes to like what Brother Khufu was saying, people of color, Aborigines are people of color. And there is a commonality between early Paleo-Mongoloids and the Australasians. But we got to look at the phase change that happened. When sub-Saharan Africans leave out, they go from African to Negrito to Australasian, which is the Southeast Asians, to Paleo-Mongoloid, to Proto-Mongoloid, to direct Mongoloid that you see today. It's a phase and stages that it goes through. So when it comes to people of color, when the African leaves out, he step into Asia, he's still black. And he spent time over there for accumulation of time, for thousands of years. So this is the remnants or the vestiges of this is the black Andamanese people that you see in the Andaman Islands near India, and the Mani people of Thailand, and the Ati people of the Philippines, and even the black Aborigines. The genome changed, but the phenotype didn't change. And in some areas, the phenotype changed through time. You know, we know that genome mutates first before phenol. And then sometimes in certain cases, the phenol mutates later on. And we do know that the Paleo-Mongoloid phenotype morphology phenotypically from Paleo-Mongoloid to Proto-Mongoloid comes out of Australoids. If you go back into Mongolia or Siberia 15 to 20,000 years, a lot of those people look like Australasians. They look like the Ati people of the Philippines. They were dark skinned. You know, when they looked at Mati Boy, or from the Mata people of Siberia with basal haplogroup R, he was described as being dark skinned with dark eyes. So the genome mutated, the haplogroup, but the phenotype wasn't. He was still dark. In certain areas, I'm sure he didn't have a so-called, this new racial constructive term called Negroid morphology with pronathism, yet and still he was dark skinned. You had some pseudo-pronathism in some cases phenotypically. So they were still dark-skinned people. So if we're looking at it from a darker skin perspective, yeah, the original people that was in America was dark-skinned. If we're looking at the people in Asia, the original people in Asia was dark-skinned. And the further back in time, the more and more you're going to see these dark-skinned people. And the further back in time, you're going to find an African. If we study the human genome and the migratory rates of people, the migratory routes of people, before sodium potassium exchange of calcium 55 or SLC 245 kicks in from A111T, which is alanine or thyrine, mutates on chromosome 15 and stands out only 13,000 years ago near the Georgian area. Most people were brown and so-called black, or darker skinned is classified as black. So that's the phases. So when Pangea exists, we didn't exist at that time. So we can't base it off the plate tectonics or the continents splitting and one group of humans stayed in America and the other group of humans stayed in Africa. No, this is all dealing with humans migrating out of Africa. We had a few out of Africa migrations. The first few wasn't successful. The one that was successful was the one that occurred 75,000 to 120,000 years ago. And we can see this off specific markers following the human genome or the trail from CTM168 to mitochondrial DNA L3, going into mitochondrial DNA M and N and all the other women that you see that develop in Eurasia, to CTM168 leaving out of the Great Rift Valley, going into basal Eurasians, which is D and E, and C and F, going into the other groups of people that you see outside of Africa. That was the successful out of Africa migrant, and you can see that through the base, through that human genome that was successful. Before the C and T and L3, the other early African migrants was probably A's and B's, who were early hunter-gatherers, who really wasn't that successful. Like the jaw that they found in Israel recently, from a modern human that was 175,000 to 195,000 years. I say 175,000. They stretch it to 195,000 to match it up with Omo Man 1, you know, and some tricks. But he was, like they say, the first estimate was 175,000. You got Omo Man 1 and Omo Man 2 in Ethiopia, Kabish, Ethiopia, which goes back 195,000 to 200,000 years. Either way, those people wasn't successful. And you also had the Skahul cave people in Israel, 170,000. They wasn't successful. You know, so we have to understand what's going on.
And for the people, when you describe a set of people as not being successful, describe what you mean by that statement.
Well,
classify
what I mean by it wasn't successful is that out of Africa, the environment wasn't friendly to these people. Some had died through famine, some died through drought. The climates was changing. You know, when it's an ice age in Europe, it's a drought in North Africa. You know, you had different glacier periods kicking in. These people wasn't successful in the out of Africa migration. You find modern human teeth in China 170,000 years ago. They didn't succeed. They died because of the environment. The environment wasn't too friendly for them. The environment was friendly for us when we migrated out of Africa 75,000 to 120,000 years ago. When you see the success of CT-M168 descendants and mitochondrial DNA L3 descendants, that was the one that was successful. Ones prior before that wasn't successful because the environment wasn't that friendly to us. So they all died out. And this is why we find relics, and you find like in the Skahul cave, it showed that the people was malnutrition. They starved to death. You look at the dude, the jawbone, he was up there by himself. The nigga could have been dragged in a cage. In a cave by an animal. You know what I'm saying? And then you had our early archaic human groups who migrated out of Africa, because you know it's more than one species of human. We're the only successful species of human that succeeded. But you had archaic human groups that left out, like our early great-great-grandfather, Homo heidelbergensis, who evolved into Neanderthal and Denisovan outside of Africa. They were successful, but when you look at Neanderthal, Homo neanderthalis, he had a lot of health conditions and health issues. You know, you look at his areas and his regions that he lived in. You know, he had rickets. He had a lot of malfunctions. He developed poorly. Homo denisovan, you don't really find a lot of him. The only place they found Homo denisovan was in the remnants of him was in a Siberian cave between a finger bone of a hybrid modern human girl. And I mean, it was a modern human finger bone of a girl who had these denisovan traits, and which showed that it came from another archaic hominid species. And you also find some of those same genes in the people in the Himalayas that live in those high altitude of the mountains, those Tibetan people that develop a certain genes within their hemoglobin levels, which allow them to live on high altitudes of mountains for long periods of time. That gene is beneficial for them in that area. You get what I'm saying? But outside of that, when it comes to our species, when we tried to go outside of Africa a few times, it wasn't successful until around 120,000 to 75,000 years ago.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to even say 175,000 because that wasn't successful. I say 100,000 to 75,000 years ago, based off CT-M168 and L3 mitochondrial DNA.
And when you was talking about them stretching that date to 190,000 years to fit another theorem that they had, the white boys had, explain that.
Well, they trying to make it evenly with Omo Man 1 in Kabish, Ethiopia, which is 195,000 years. See, what they do is, you know, we got to be careful with these biased scientists. Everything they say, the methodology is on point, but their narratives is sloppy and bullshit in some cases. You know, so yes, you know, he was 170. They give you the estimation. He was estimated to 175,000 to 195,000, but they only put that 195,000 shit there to match up with Omo Man 1 in Kabish Valley in Ethiopia, which is 195,000 years old. And in some cases, you have some scientists that's trying to argue against the out of Africa theory. They're not going against it yet. It's not a scientific consensus for it yet, but some of them are still trying to fight against it to try to put modern humans in other places. So we can't be so at ease because they saying it's out of Africa now. It's a lot of scientists in the background that's trying to go backwards and forward on that. So we got to be careful with these numbers that they put out there and the biasness that goes on. We seen that with the Egyptian mummies recently from 3,500 years to second century AD, and they was basing it off the mitochondrial DNA that was Eurasian. And what they don't tell you about the Eurasian mitochondrial DNA is that they found mitochondrial DNA L3 in there, which is sub-Saharan African. But due to mitochondrial DNA L3, certain downstream mutations in the human genome, DYS933, the numbering doesn't match up with mitochondrial DNA L2s and L1s that we know for sure is successfully sub-Saharan. I mean, that we know for sure is sub-Saharan African. So due to L3 giving birth to all the Eurasians, a lot of these geneticists try to equate her with Eurasians. And they did find L3 amongst those mummies that was mitochondrial DNA J2 and U6 and M1A1, you know, and that's the biasness that goes on. You know what I'm saying? And they wanted to say that the reason why the 2nd century AD and the Fayum mummies and the Roman era had sub-Saharan African genes is because they was dragged there as slaves. And they tried to say that the Egyptians today have more sub-Saharan African genes through mitochondrial than they did back then. But it's only an 8% difference. You get what I'm saying? It's only an 8%. If you accumulate it autosomally, it's only an 8% differences with the mitochondrial DNA compared to modern Egyptians today and ancient Egyptians back then. So it's bullshit. They haven't touched.
Well, just to be clear as well, like for the people, when you're talking about dynasties of Kemet, what dynasties are we talking about? Are we talking about the final 2, the final 5?
We're talking about this is Middle Egypt. This is 1500 BC to the 2nd century, which is the final, the Ptolemaic and Roman era, Roman end, the end in the middle. This is the middle to the end. This is not the beginning, and this is not, you know what I'm saying, this is not pre-dynastic Egypt. We have to understand that there was no gates and borders to Northeast Africa and the Levant. You know what I'm saying? We have to understand that there wasn't no borders then. So you had a lot of West Eurasian groups who were going backwards into Africa. When we study like the Iberian Marusian population, we need to throw that Iberian Marusian shit out, because the geneticists recently discovered that the Iberian Marusians in North Africa didn't have any European genes. They were just really technically North Africans and Levantine groups who came together. There was no borders then. So I like to call them Afro-Levantine Marusians. That's a better title to give them, because there's nothing coming from Iberia. And even the people that lived in Iberia were descendants of people that came out of the Levant or the so-called Middle East in Mesolithic time. But anyway, when they studied the Iberian Marusians, they were a cross between North Africans. You find a high amount of EM78 in the subclades, which is indigenous to Northeast Africa. And you have mitochondrial DNA M1, U6A, U6B, a few J2s. And these people were also the same people that gave rise to the Natufians and the Levant, who were a crossbreed between basal Eurasians and West Eurasian hunter-gatherers who came from the Marsharian and Attilian groups who came out of Northeast Africa before that. So they like to give credit to these Eurasians coming back into Africa, but they don't want to give credit to a lot of the North African genes that's in Eurasia, specifically E1B1B, you have EV12, which is who comes from the early cluster of EB68, which gave rise to the EM78 marker 20-some thousand years ago. But his father, EM215, come out of the Horn of Africa. The trace roots come out of the Horn of Africa, which is the early basal branch of E1B1B. The same brother to EV38. You find a lot of biasness going on with the EV38 marker. They try to make it seem like it's only a present amongst sub-Saharan West Africans, but EV38, his origins is in the Horn of Africa. The father was EP2, which gave birth to both of us, and they also found EP2 amongst the Natufians. But Ramesses III was EB38, and just not EB38, but the subclade E1BA1 M2, which developed in the Niger area and migrated probably around when the last phase of the Holocene kicked in, and people started migrating from west to east near Niger. So if we study, and you also find sickle cell trait amongst sub-Saharan Africans. We know that sickle cell developed in the Niger area because you got 3 strands of it. But we know specifically that sickle cell, which was beneficial to help fight off malaria, developed in the Niger area from descendants of EB38 that migrates out of the Horn and goes into West 19,000 years ago, make it to Niger around 11,000 years ago, and develop this sickle cell within the hemoglobin levels around the fight off malaria around 9,000 to 8,000 years ago. And you find it amongst indigenous Egyptians. So, it's the biasness in the way the narrative of how they explain things and edit things is completely bullshit. And I can get at Max Planck Institute, which is one of the major components that's doing this bullshit. And that's why it's important for us to get involved and study science more and understand scientific methodology and just science, technology, engineering, and math, period, STEM period. We need to get involved in this shit because they're writing the narrative of what is and what's not. And just because you're Eurasian, that doesn't equate to white skin. You know what I'm saying? Because early Eurasians, you can find the descendants of the early Eurasians in the Socotra Island off of Yemen. They're dark skinned. Looking at their DNA, map it out, they're completely Eurasian. So, you know, just because you're Eurasian doesn't mean pale skin. So you got to be careful with a lot of this shit that they talk about.
As you said, there's a political agenda behind some of the release of information that they're coming with. There's always an agenda. They're not giving you free information for no reason. They're trying to create a narrative.
Right. They're giving us that same Hamito-Semitic race or Pharaonic invasion theory in a more complex way today. They're fighting against Dr. Auntie Job and other African scholars that exist prior before in a more complex manner through this human genome shit. And you got to be careful with the human genome because human genome does not determine the mentality of the people. Like, for example, you look at the Hausa people. They have an early Central Asian Y chromosome, R1BVA8. That shit came in Africa 7,000 years ago. But when the Hausa came amongst those indigenous Afro-Asiatic speakers near Chad, who have a high amount of Nilo-Saharan or Nilotic features autosomally in their DNA, but we're talking about language family. I don't want to throw language family in there. But through genome, the mentality of the Hausa is not like their early ancestors who came from the early Eurasia. And they're completely black today. You know what I'm saying? And skin tone is adaptive. So we can't look at human genome to determine the mentality of the people. You got black men that's walking around here that's 80%, 90% sub-Saharan African, but they got a European granddaddy who raped their grandmothers and gave them that Y chromosome that makes them a man. So you got white black men that's walking around here with R1B M269. Looking at them, would you call them a British man? No, because overall, autosomally, they're still sub-Saharan African because the autosomal gene stands out more than their little Y chromosome. It only makes up 0.less% than makes up only for less percent than 0.1% of your DNA. When it comes to your sex chromosome, that doesn't stand out of your overall autosomal. So you got to be careful with that shit that they doing, man.
Most definitely, most definitely. Let's take a different tack now, yeah, because we were talking about ancient Kemet. We're talking about these Nile Valley traditions and cultures, yeah. How much science did they possess? Because again, we got this normal theory that, you know, the further back we go, obviously, the more primitive, they knew less, and this kind of way of thinking. But in your mind state and from you guys' research, and I'll start with KHONSU. Give me your opinion on this, yeah. First of all, like, where do you see us at scientifically in those times of what we're classing as the golden age of Kemet? Because again, as I said, the narrative that's being pushed a lot of the time is it's a primitive, religious, superstitious culture. There wasn't a lot of science. So speak on that. What's your opinion and take on that, KHONSU?
Well, it's a mission.
Before you answer, brother, and I say that, and I'm gonna just drop this in there in relation to the Afrofuturism talk as well that seems to be going on, that's sparked from this Black Panther movie and whatever, where you're seeing obviously high levels of technology running from back a day till now. What is your take on that?
Well, let me answer the latter first. The Afrofuturistic, again, is non-cipher. Technology does not give way to things like that. And again, it's a science fiction movie, you know, just like anyone watching Star Wars, any other science fiction movie. And, you know, of course, again, with our psychology, we want to latch on to anything that gives us a semblance of identity. We had a very high science, but it was archaic. It has nothing to do with being primitive. You know what I mean? The term primitive has to do with limited data. That doesn't mean that you're ignorant or that you're not intelligent or you don't have a natural means of discerning information. Now, when we go back to Kemet, when we look at certain aspects of studying history, which are geology, seismology, archaeology, world history, genetics that are now, you have genetic anthropologists now, which wasn't back then when we had the Black Dynasty movement in the Afrocentric period of the middle 90s. These things created false senses of identity. We had a very high science in Kemet, particularly with the social aspects of Kemet. When you look into the literature and the writing, you see high levels of cognizance when it comes to describing the human experience. When it comes to describing spirituality, you see high levels of intelligence. So intelligence is basically in the eye of the beholder. Intelligence is only as limited as the information that's given to it. Henceforth, the root word intel. You can be intelligent of flying an airplane and have no idea of how to drive a tractor trailer. So it's a totally different situation when we talk about that term intelligent. We try, the European tries to minimize the African experience by using general terms like primitive and things like that. But the proper descriptive term would be archaic forms of intelligence that took on an older modality, a different understanding of science. The science was applied in an older fashion. So that's my take on that.
That's all. Brother Kufu, you still with us?
Yes, sir.
What's your take on what Brother KHONSU was talking about? On how you view ancient Kemet as far as technology, wisdom, knowledge?
Well, based on their observations, they were able to, establish a lot of things. I mean, like I said before, you're dealing with people that are coming out of a hunter-gatherer lifestyle to settling down, and once they're able to settle down and become more harvest-like agriculturalists, their minds are able to be freed up to focus on other things like expression and art. That's why in the beginning you find like cave art, so they become more expressive. Like African people actually put the soul and spirit in humanity. Like, you can't talk about no arts, no liberal. I don't want to hear no Picasso, because if you want to talk Picasso, I'm going to give you my man Jean-Michel Basquiat. So, I mean, like, Africans, we were the first Picassos and Beethovens, because we was expressing ourselves in art, with paintings, with makeup, the way we dress, with beads. And these things developed. As these things developed, trade developed. And as trade developed, more resources were able to people were able to have access to more resources, and with that you could create more things, innovate things, and create new things. So Egypt, as far as technological, they had a lot of technology. Writing is a technology. The very hieroglyphs, you can see when they come from the glyphs to the Demotic and modern day, you can see some of the glyphs even turn into like Arabic. So that's technology right there, because that's expressive thought. What observation can I make from nature and turn that into an advancement for the group of people that I'm dealing with? So that's the technology that they dealt with: math, the sciences, the ability to be creative and express themselves based on their environment. That's the technology and the intelligence that they had.
No doubt. And before you log off, let me ask you this now. I don't know whether you guys have, again, been privy to the Dr. Reggie and Jabari conversation about spirituality and Reggie's uncomfortableness with some of the ritualistic, as he sees it, non-referenced practices of certain Kemetic priests, if you want to call them that, or practitioners. What's your take on that?
Well, let me give you my take real quick. There's a book that people can get. It's a good book. I like it. It's called From Fetish to Gods by Wallace Budge. Now, his attempt in that book is to show how did this symbolic thought of God come into the minds of these primitive people, as he called them in the text. Even though he kind of says they created math and all this stuff, he still is talking about them as being primitive, from the colonial perspective that he was writing in. But the book is called From Fetish to Gods. And basically, to me, a lot of that stuff is based on your interpretation of reality and what you can get people to agree on. That's how it comes into existence. That's what takes place. We don't have to agree on anything, and then that won't be something that's relevant. All these things that we do are based on agreements. All these gods, language, everything is based on agreement. So you can't say you need a reference for something that the first person initially made up, because his reference was his mind. He made it up, and it was a good idea. Good ideas go beyond references. They go beyond references and all of that stuff. Where did you great things just come out? You know, they like epiphanies. They come from, you know, a place of inspiration that you have to find yourself in and know what it's like to be there in order to come back with something. So I don't know. I just think that a lot of our people were so creative at that time. I mean, we didn't have these ideas, foreign ideas, blocking our creativity. We had access to the resources to be able to, whatever we think of, we can do. Like, come on, you got to be, how creative do you got to be to say, you know, I think I want to build a big ass pyramid and actually do it. Like, yo, I'm going to build this. And I got people around, we all going to build this, and then we're going to line them up with the stars. That's creative as fuck. We can't be that creative right now. So I don't know. Like, when they came up with that stuff, they was in a place of, they had their autonomy was free. You know, they was at their creative best. And that's why we try to connect to that same space. So I think that if something is working for you, then roll with it. But if it's not, then don't. But it's all about the creativity that gets you to that space to where it gives you that feeling or that presence of something that could be divine, or feels like this is what you need to get through any obstacles psychologically, because all of it is psychology in the first place. Something that helps you, you know, through your life.
Yeah, well, I'm feeling you. I mean, yesterday I was on Sarnet's channel and we were talking. That was one of the subjects that came up about spirituality. And just like you said, brother, you know, I said to the panel, you know, anyone can have a spiritual experience when you have a child, when you're making love, when you meet someone, when you create a great idea or achieve a great project. Those are spiritual actions for the individual that is going through that. As simple as that. But again, NGOZI, what's your take on that, brother?
I think that spirituality to the African was natural, and rituals is something, you know, that we do all the time. Sex is a ritual. Dancing is a ritual. We say words of power all the time that motivate us. You know, psychologists do it. They tell you to say certain things to make yourself feel a certain way. Life is impulsive. You are your experience. So saying certain words of power to motivate you to make you feel a certain way is beneficial. And that's what we used to do back then. And we did it in our own way at that time when it was important. The people in the Nile Valley was free compared to the people in North America that's still descent from slaves and is still in prison. So we can't think like them. They were way more freer than us. And I think what's going on with the conscious community is Eurocentricity numbness is infiltrating it with this, I look down at you because you're so-called spiritual, or you don't think like the British man scientifically, so you're not as complex as me. That's Eurocentricity. And that numb mind state is infiltrating the conscious community. You know what I'm saying? You can study science without overall trying to feel and think like him. And if you feel agitated or uncomfortable because someone uses words of power or certain ancient chants to motivate them or put them in a certain healthier mind state, there's something wrong with you. That's how the European thought. He didn't like people that was dealing with their own personal imagination. He wanted to hijack your imagination. Now that shit is leaking inside of the conscious community, and people trying to get involved with science, and they're becoming more and more Eurocentric every day, even with terms like atheism. If you don't believe, you shouldn't have a title for it. A means no, theos means deity. What does it matter? I don't think an African was walking around saying theos because theos wasn't a deity in Kemet. So it didn't matter if you was a believer or non-believer. You know what I'm saying? Either you is or you're not. Either you become an example, a progression, and live by what you understand, or you don't. So I think a lot of the Eurocentric mindset is leaking into the conscious community, and we're really not paying attention. You're becoming more and more number and more emotional or emotionalist amongst your fellow brother and sister than we was in the early 90s and 70s and 60s and 50s. It's getting worse and worse. Look at it, the mentality of the people in the conscious community. Look at how they debate over dumb shit. Look at how they look at each other when they get mad at each other. Look at how they try to silence certain people when they don't have their way or they feel uncomfortable. That's fucking hate. Hate is leaking inside of this community. And if you got niggas out there that's, and I'm calling them niggas purposely, if you got niggas out there that's uncomfortable or don't want to allow people to express themselves to uplift the so-called people that they care about, they're just as demonic and destructive and divisive as the Eurocentric shit that they talk about, because you have that same mentality. It's sick.
Yeah, yeah. Real talk, real talk. KHONSU, what's your opinion?
Well, you know, like I said earlier, I totally agree with Khufu and NGOZI, man. A lot of us, we said a lot of the same things, so you know, I don't want to be too redundant. But yeah, it's a attack once again on Black culture, Black identity, and resonating with your ancient history, and tapping into those resources. You know, and like Brother NGOZI says, you know, when you may say certain mantras, you may be what one is considered religious. Well, we have a certain religious way about us, certain spirituality about us. The African ontology, African psychology. We have a natural relationship to the planet, to nature, which gives us a certain spirituality that is unique all over the world. So quite naturally, the term consciousness is relative to understanding how you relate and fit into this paradigm.
No doubt, most definitely. I mean, again, if we're dealing with aspects of nature, then as you said, we have to understand our place within that string theory model. Yeah, big to small, small to big. Where do you fit, and how do you keep that chain moving?
And let me say this: when we talk about string theory and things like that, those are byproducts of social constructs. We had a concept of the string theory from an African ontology. Yeah. So ours is a bit different, yet the same. We would use different nomenclature. We would express differently through art and certain sciences. We would express it much differently, but it wasn't unlike what science is today. Because now science has the advantage today of technology. So when you have science, technology, engineering, and math that evolves, then you're going to have a different modality. But the archaic base is always going to go back to African ontology.
I mean, let me just say this. Let's look at the Big Bang Theory and the explanation of how out of nothing you have this expansion of gas from a single point, which caused this Big Bang. And from the expansion of gas forms, you know, super subatomic particles that forms into platelets or planets, and it cools down. And from planets, you start to see, you know, basic fundamental chemicals or elements, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur, causing chemical reactions to allow organisms to, you know, develop from prokaryotic to eukaryotic state, forming a nucleus into, you know, simple organisms, the complex organisms through time. The Africans had a understanding of a characteristic to each event or each phase within that whole thing that I just explained. The European looks at it numb and gives it to you straight to the point. When we say the Ennead, none and none, formlessness, ku and ku, darkness, Amun and Amunet, hiddenness, who and who het, boundlessness, we are bearing witness to the different phases of super subatomic particles becoming atomic to molecular to DNA and RNA and then cell. And each one of it has a complexity. You know, this primordial energy becomes, you know, the word of the divine, which is, you know, the gas, which is Ra, thermonuclear fusion, and his phase is Kepra, Harakati, and Tamut, which is the setting stage. And then it gives rise to the Ennead, with Atum at the top, which is the setting stage, to Shu and Tefnut and Gab and Nut, and, you know, Asar and Aset, or Nebhet and Set, or whatever, and Haru at the base, or, you know, however you deal with it. Each phase had a characteristic, and we understood the personality. See, consciousness wasn't just based off a sense of self-aware. The consciousness was just awareness going through stages, period. Even Adam had his own sense of awareness until it changes its atomic structure. And you can look at that in the periodic table. The more photons that exist on the periodic table, the more the elements changes. So if you add more photons, the elements will change its position from hydrogen to helium. So it has an awareness at its own unique state. and it changes. Once it changes, it's like changing mind. It's a reactionary process through signal, stimulus, communion. Everything is communicating. And we do this spiritually and naturally. So we understood and bear witness to the personalities and the phases. And each phase has its own characteristic and own attribute. And we put it in anthropomorphic and zoomorphic symbolism, explain it through processes of nature. We had a relationship with the environment. We didn't domesticate and destroy ecosystems the way the Britons and the European do out of selfishness and greed. You get what I'm saying? We respect the values in certain signals, even in our ways of going to war with other groups. We had a certain way of treating the people that we went to war with compared to how he do it. Yeah. We got to be careful how we think. You feel me?
Yeah, definitely. I'm feeling you 100% on that. The mind state and, as you said, the understanding of environment and interaction was on a whole next level. And I think that's what clouds a lot of the conversations or a lot of the builds that should be happening within the community. Because again, there's no respect for environment and understanding of your place within it. So therefore, there's no rules that govern you when you debate, when you conversate, when you do commerce with your brother. You know what I'm saying? It all goes out the window from not having those basic tenets of how to interact with your environment and how to be. You get me? Let me take this opportunity just to say big up to the chat room that's tuning in so far. Yeah, big up to MBK in the house. Yeah, every time. We was talking about you guys earlier. I'm going to get to that subject matter a bit. But again, when you're looking at the conscious community, you're seeing, you know, the ups and downs that's gone on over the last few years. What or where do you see us as this fluid community going in the next 5 years to come? Do you see there being more of a coming together, more of a general consensus on how to teach, how to debate, or do you see it slowly slipping into more disarray, more arguments, you know, more dissension? How do you guys see this?
People in the community is hating each other more and more every day. It's going to go into a worse disarray. All you got to do is read or say something better than the next person and they get jealous and want to attack you. Or all you got to do is get more fans than another person over the airwaves or the computer and they attack you. If you got more of a group of people following you over the next, they find a way to assassinate one another and talk about the person publicly and try to assassinate their character to win people over. These people have a real hate for one another, man. They hate each other. And if some of these people can see each other, they might kill each other. They're sick. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. So yeah, they play and pretend for a little while like they cool and kumbaya, but say something that they don't agree with and see how long their attention span for you lasts. You know, they harmonious nature. They're gonna attack you and assassinate your character. And we see it over and over and over again. So to me, I see this, I call it the loud community, flunky, the unconscious community, confused community. It's not gonna come out of that group. It's not. That shit is Hollywood and bullshit and just talk. It's not going to come out of that because these dudes actually have a hate for each other. And none of these people really like each other in certain areas. Some of them do, some of them don't, but they have their cliques and groups. That's not honesty. You can't ride with somebody because he has a certain fan base or a certain group of people that follow him over the other. So you want to be down with him. That's bullshit. You feel me? So I see it getting worse and worse. I see it getting worse and worse. And I don't see revolution or anything coming out of the conscious community. I just see con men, trying to, get shit out of people that work hard for what they got and want to be the leader of your mind. I'm using the word out of context. They want to be they want you to only offer to them and give to them. You don't know nothing. I want to be your teacher. And as long as I'm teaching you, you good. If you listen to them over there, I can't fuck with you no more. That's a sickness, bro, and it's getting worse and worse. So I see it just, fading out and becoming a joke because a lot of the younger people that listen to this stuff, they laugh at it. And this is why, younger groups of people that's 19, 18, and 20, they make fun of it. Are you talking that African shit? Are you talking that Hotep shit? Saying Hotep in the 80s and 90s was powerful. Now people make fun of it, that Hotep shit, because it's becoming a joke. You supposed to be for the people, talking about how much you love the people, but then when somebody piss you off, you calling them bitches, talking about their family, talking about you gonna kill them. doing all this other bullshit, and then they publicify to make it public so the world can hear your ignorance. They're not following Neely Fuller method at all. You know, it's just a bunch of bullshit. You know, I wouldn't. It's sick.
No, listen, again, I do think something has to change in the paradigm of how we deal with one another, especially if you're professing to know the history, the greatness, the levels of unity that we once possessed to achieve certain things in our history. If you profess to know these things and you're carrying the tenets of Maya, or, you know, the higher levels of Islam, or the higher levels of whatever you want to call it, the Hebrew Israelite faiths or whatever, again, it don't make sense for you to be carrying on a certain way. It doesn't match up. I do believe also there is a great psychosis going on right now in the community where, again, you know, your leaders are very weak in certain situations. Like, we've definitely got a big gap from some of the elders that came out maybe 30, 40 years ago, as opposed to now. Yeah, we're scraping the barrel a bit more. In you guys' opinion, what are the, you know, starting with, let's go to KHONSU. Like, what do you think are the main areas that need to be covered to create a strong Black community? And when I say a Black community, I'm talking a worldwide Black community, a consensus of people that are in agreement. What do you think are needed? What are the tenets that are needed? What are the areas that need to be worked on to allow people to have the mind state to be able to work together a bit better?
Well, we have to address our psychological disposition, because the majority of us have a sickness, and it's cultural misappropriation. So we need psychological evaluation. We need to create a codified means of communication so that we can actually have a productive social capital between us. We have to understand how to be economic in this particular world that we live in, because this world that we live in, it's not changing anytime soon. We're not conscious of the fact that we're at rock bottom. We have delusions of grandeur because, yes, we built the pyramids, and yes, we have some great archaic, antique things that have happened in our history. But where's the history now? What are we adding to the paradox now? We are comfortable with 3,000-year-old information. That is a problem. That is Afrocentric when it's blown out of proportion. It was never developed to do that. And mind you, it was a Western construct. It didn't come from Africa. The Afrocentrism came from North America because of the lack of our identity. So that being the case, for it to be a worldwide situation, we have to understand our status and know that we are at rock bottom. And we need to change our dementia and psychology around thinking that we have any kind of accomplishments or we've developed anything in recent years. We have not. We are fourth-class citizens in a first and second-class citizen world. And we got to admit that fact and stop with the feel-good information.
No doubt, no doubt. Brother Kufu, talk to us, brother. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I agree with the brothers, man. There's definitely a need for education. And education at the home and education at the school level. We were never educated properly as a whole. So that's why you see these different things taking place where people trying to find themselves by, you know, trying everything that's out there that's different from what we've been, you know, introduced to. Like you were saying, this thing about knowing and being conscious. You have you can have all the knowledge you want, but that doesn't make you wise, though. You know, you have Christians and Muslims that don't know any of this stuff, but they are still wise. You don't have to be wise. In order to be wise, you don't have to know everything. So,
well, wisdom is the application of knowledge, isn't it?
You know,
yeah, you can know just a few things, but as you said, if you make that work for you, if you take those 1-2 bits of information and you formulate a good idea, a more efficient way of doing things, that's true wisdom. The application of that knowledge that you learn. So I'm with you on that one, brother. Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that one. Riggsy, you still there? This guy. I don't know what happened to my co-host people. He's silent in the building.
I'm not silent. I'm just doing things behind the scenes as I'm always working hard. So as I always say, go to the GoFundMe, UK, USA GoFundMe. Help us donate. Put down as much as you can, even if it's a $10, 10 pence, 10 cents or whatever it is. We need that help to get ourselves to the USA. So if you can help us donate to the GoFundMe, UK, USA link up, I'll put it in the chat, and I'll keep on promoting behind the scenes. I'll speak to you in a minute.
That's all. And don't forget as well, Professor James Smalls, for all my London crew right now. Professor James Smalls is in town this week. He's going to be at the Mayat Centre in Tottenham Hell on Friday, I believe, doing a little press conference. Is he there on Saturday as well, Terry?
He'll be on his way to Birmingham.
Okay.
So he'll be in Birmingham on Sunday and Monday for the African Liberations.
That's it.
But Friday he will be there, and we will be getting our personal footage, which we'll be putting up at the time of the press release. So I think it's about 6, 7 o'clock. He'll be doing a lecture on Friday, this Friday coming.
That's it. That's Professor James Smalls, people, one of our respected elders, flying into town to do something. You'll see some footage on Black Eyes TV 7, most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. Right, so Sarnet TV Awards. Hey, let's get to it. How do you guys feel about it? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a positive thing? How do you see it?
I think it's positive for what Sarnet is doing. I mean, we look at BET Awards and they get awards for the foolery and bullshit that they do. So I think that what Brother Sarnet is doing, creating this Black Power Awards, is definitely beneficial. I mean, it can get people involved and with trying to, he's putting. I like the way he put a little hippish edge to consciousness. Sarnetta gives it its rhythm. So I think that what he's doing is definitely beneficial and needed. I mean, if we can look at the BET Awards and movie awards and all this other stuff, I mean, people should get honored for what they do in their contribution to so-called conscious or awareness of the people to the best of their ability. I don't think it's a real competition. I think it's all out of fun and love. All of us are winners in the end. There's no such thing as losing or winning if you're trying to do for the people. All of us are winners. But I think it's out of fun and love, and it shouldn't be taken out of context or get mad because somebody won something over you. Only thing you can do is just do better, and keep doing better, and you will be recognized for it. And I think it's fun. I think it's fun and out of love. And I think it's he could have been doing, other people could have been doing a lot worse than that. So I think that what he's doing is righteous. It's needed. I can't, hate on that. It's good intention.
That's all. KHONSU, what's your opinion, brother?
I think it's a positive thing. I think it's good for the community. It's just a positive attempt at trying to bring Black people together under one common movement. So it's good. It's healthy. Hopefully everything goes well. There isn't any drama or any negative proportions, and everybody goes out there and has a good time. And like Brother NGOZI is saying, it's not really the spirit of competition. It's just a recognition of recognizing the people in our communities. So I think it's all good.
No doubt.
Okay. I want to ask a question for you lot, right? How detrimental is it that the African diaspora needs to link up with the African people?
Oh man, it's needed, bro. I mean, we all going through the same situation. Africa is being colonized right now. The Africans in the diaspora, none of us are better than each other. But we have been under the feet of different oppressors in North America or in the diaspora for years. Our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and Jamaica, y'all know how the British work. A lot of our brothers and sisters back home don't. A lot of our brothers and sisters in Latin America, they understand how, you know, how what happens when you become mulatto or mestizo and the colorism that goes on. The African Americans is in the far north. You know, we understand the business and the capitalistic ways of North America. And just like our brothers and sisters back home, our Nigerian brothers who understand engineering and technology and math and the resources over there that they have, you know, it's important for us to network with each other and see each other as brothers and sisters over everybody else that's trying to fuck over us. With our skill in the diaspora and the skill that they have on the continent, if we can ignite that, we'll be a powerhouse of the world. You get what I'm saying? We understand colonialism. We understand it completely. We understand what it's like to be oppressed. We understand slavery. A lot of our brothers and sisters, when they were just being enslaved recently in Libya, back home, a lot of those people didn't know how to handle that the way you and me do. That shit ain't happening to us again over here. We ain't going for it.
So I'm
go ahead.
Ask a question then. Would you feel that the African diaspora is sleeping for reasons why it's not connecting?
They keeping us confused. Racist white supremacy is doing this stuff. They keep us distracted with music and cars and all this other shit. And every time you get a chance to think for yourself, you ain't got time to think. You know, the genocide that goes on in our community in Chicago and all over the major cities in the United States, they gunning each other down. Deaf, scared to go outside, can't eat right. All these are distractions to keep you confused and can't focus. You can't focus or concentrate properly because you're always doing something. You know what I'm saying? The average citizen in North America, I'm just saying not all of us, but some of us, we work 5 days a week and we party on the weekend. When you got time to think because you're always distracted doing something. Some of our attention spans ain't even long enough to even want to hear the shit that me and you talking about because our focal point is somewhere else. So yeah, it's racist white supremacy has done this shit to us. We don't want to accept that the Europeans or the racist white supremacy in North America has created a monster. They created some shit that some things can't be reversed. And it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah, because in the format of understanding that, I like to put things into categories. Like we have Asia, I call them the replicators. I call the Europeans the middlemen, and then I call the African people the creators. But with the African diaspora, I see them that we have the knowledge of all, and it's detrimental that we should be helping the African people in the format of understanding that they able to create because they have the source,
that's right,
or the resources, so that we understand the European middlemen in their format where we should become that middleman as well as being the creators of things.
That's right.
Yeah,
I agree with you, King, and I think our base igniting and unification should start with African Americans and our African brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. We got to fix our relationship first. And after that, we have to fix our relationship with our brothers and sisters in Afro-Latino community. That's all part of the certain parts of the Caribbean as well. And then it networks us with our brothers and sisters back home on the continent. We have to recognize, it's a damn shame that a person can become a Jamaican, a Haitian, and a Trinidadian, and an African American, and we all was on the same ship at one time, just dropped off in different places. And now we're divided by these false titles. The Jamaican to call the North American, African American a Yankee. We want to make fun of them. We got to fix our relationship in the diaspora first because they got us so fucking divided. And then after we fix our relationship in the diaspora, we'll network with our brothers and sisters back home already through increments and pieces. You get what I'm saying? But we have a lot of fucking issues, man. But we don't identify ourselves as one another no more.
And this is where me personally, and understanding the African diaspora in the UK, because the African diaspora in the UK have one advantage over many in that they are still interlinked with people abroad. Comparing, understanding that in the UK, majority of people have someone abroad, where in America it's much more difficult because, as I said to you, most of you have been born over many years, have understood that they don't have that much link except for people in America. So it's something that needs to able to sort itself out. enhance why we do a lot of what we call the USA UK link up and the Caribbean and link up, because the more we link up and the more we start to work together, then the more we can able to focus on Africa, on its resources, and helping them to able to develop.
Ashe.
And understanding that we're one people, you get me? Because me and KHONSU was talking about this before the show, and I was saying the same thing. You know, I think for a lot of our American brothers and sisters, economically, and because of the size of your country, the size of your states. Remember, New York State is the size of the whole of the UK. Like, so I think there's a definite you just get stuck in your zone, innit? Like, there's a lot of people that don't even leave their state, let alone travel state to state, let alone leave the country and come to a European country. And again, that's economic pressures that stop that from happening and all sorts. But again, it breaks down those natural relationships that I think Black people from Europe and England have a lot more with Africa directly, just because we get to travel a bit more. Economically, it's a bit easier because the pound's always been strongest globally. So again, the money we have to save is still, you know, a madness. Don't ever get it twisted, but it's a lot more doable for us to travel than it is for most Americans. So I think that definitely lends weight to people's opinions on people from the continent, you know, people from other countries, even people from England and Europe, as opposed to Americas, and people in the Caribbean. Shout out to our Trinidad people in the chat room right now. Do you get me? Supporting the place. So yeah, I definitely think we need to start cultivating those relationships with our brothers and sisters on the continent. I think that's the only way. Every cultural group that we see out here in the diaspora, that is the West, that are strong, it's because they have a strong link to their homeland. Obviously, Black people here, we've had a massive breakdown of our culture through slavery, through all these persecution and ways and means. And as we talked about, that needs to be rebuilt, restructured, but definitely without that connection to the continent, we're forever gonna be adrift. We're forever gonna be a weakened version of what we could be when it comes to building a community with strong economic ties that will last, strong trade routes, as my brother Terry will always talk about. Follow the trade routes and you see where everything's going. You get me?
Yeah, you know, and that's why I have to shout out to the true historian that gives me a bit more better insight into that form of trade, because you know what, for us to able to connect, the basis of our common denominator is trade, because if we are able to do business amongst each other, then we can able to build a better relationship. Because if you look in the past, for even most religious people like Islam or Christianity, they used trade to able to make people adapt to what they were trying to do. So I get that in that format that we need to make it strictly business before we can do anything else.
Most definitely, most definitely, most definitely.
Let me ask you brothers a question. If you don't mind. What are you brothers? How is the UK feeling about this Meghan Markle and the Prince Harry getting engaged? Some sides are saying okay, she's black, and some people are saying no, she's mixed, she's biracial. But I seen the Kingdom Choir perform, and I seen a lot of British people showing up to the weddings over there. You know, the Idris. You know, there's a lot of, you know, what's your take on that over there?
But you know what it is? That's the media showing up.
Listen, it's the same situation as when Obama was made president. Yeah, you're gonna have a whole heap of people who are lost, who have been starved of any positive imagery. So the moment they see anything that looks remotely black on the screen or doing something that they class as upbeat, yeah, and above the usual norm, they're gonna flock to it. But again, you know, for anyone, and I did say this on Sarnetta's show yesterday when they tried to mention it, people's got to understand they're related. That's not even like, she's related to the very person she's married through her dad's bloodline to the Queen Mother. So already they're cousins. So let's get all of the randomness out. Again, this is a staged event. That's what people need to understand. You know, for those who want to attend it or believe that there's some form of black empowerment to gain from it, you know, I just got to slap you in the head for that talk.
But that's the reason why I said it's more media orientated, is that you're not getting the black community saying, putting up their flags and saying what an amazing thing. It's more of, it's an abomination in the format that we've got to understand. We're in a time of what we call Brexit, and this Brexit is where England is pulling out of Europe. But Europe and England itself is trying to find a new wave and a new way. And what they're doing is they're going back into their past by highlighting and bringing up the relationships with the Commonwealth. So the more they pull the Commonwealth, the more riches that they can make through the Commonwealth, for them to able to disconnect and not share with the Europeans in the other continents. Because as you know, in the past of the trade routes, you understand that they were always warring each other during the Spice Wars. So when you understand that they were always warring each other, you always know that the British will not want to share their riches with the others to make them broke again.
Again, for me, too much propaganda. As I said, people are starved of imagery, so they're going to flock to it. You know, we already know white people's at zero birth rate. Royals have been intermarrying for the longest, so them having a fresh shot of some mixed blood every so often, you know, it's neither here nor there for me. But even, you know, you're never going to see a full black person marry into the royal family. Facts. Yeah. The moment this girl has married in, whatever blackness anyone can perceive about her that she may have, you're not going to see ever again, because again, they're not going to roll with that. And on top of it, the person who she's marrying as well isn't the official prince, because anybody from England knows that Prince Charles isn't his dad. Yeah, like he was born out of fear. So it's really wishy-washy as far as I'm concerned.
But you know, regardless of the situation, even if he was his dad or not, he's the second king. He's not going to get that throne. So it's pointless. The furthest he can actually be is a prince of a certain state. So that's the furthest he would get. So it doesn't matter who he wants to marry or how he wants to marry. It's irrelevant, because now Prince Charles's elder son, which is William, has already got has got a child that's a son. So it's irrelevant. It will never pass that guy's bloodline unless you wipe out the whole of William's bloodline.
Succession is already set.
Yeah, so yeah, it's people just talk about these situations, but you know, the real thing is that the black community didn't really come out for it. It was just the media entertainment of black people that want to get the limelight, because a lot of people like this thing. Oh, it's a limelight. If I go to this wedding, my numbers are going to shoot up. My fan rates are going to shoot up, X, Y, and Z. That's why you would get a lot of people that would jump on that wagon.
As I said, none of it is real. All of it is already being scripted. None of it's a surprise meeting. It's not like my man went somewhere, met her randomly, and somehow they just liked each other and everything was cool. You know, as I said, it's scripted. They're already been proven that they're related. The same way Obama is related to other presidents and Dick Cheney's cousin and all sorts of stupidness. Like, we got to see through the mist of all of this foolishness. So whether or not they make it a public spectacle and everyone's supposed to share in this moment, again, it's a very scripted thing, from my opinion.
It's the same, as I said, if we ask you lot, the same thing with Obama, if I ask you, lot, did Obama have power in America?
Did you feel the winds of change as you saw him being elected?
Absolutely not.
You see, and this is what we're talking about. They try to wash our minds and influence our minds, thinking that they're giving us a token, but that token is like an empty glass with no water.
And you've been in the desert for about 6 weeks, yeah.
And it's still a caste system, because Prince Harry wouldn't have married a woman that looked like Serena Williams. Know that.
That's what I'm saying, bro.
Yeah.
The mum got killed for trying to fucking be with an Asian guy. Yeah. There's no unauthorized inseminations going on over on that side of the water, innit? That's all you gotta know. The same way there's no random presidents walking into the office saying, yeah, I'm the independent candidate and I'm just here now on my own merits. It don't work like that. So, you know, all I can say to the people, the wider public, is wake up. If you believe that this is some sort of random occurrence, or you believe that Obama got voted in, or all these kinds of fallacies, yeah, then you need a slap in your head, because you need to wake up. Yeah.
And I just wanted to say to the family out there in the group, you know what I mean, please share, like, and subscribe. And, you know, shout out to MBK for helping us promote as much as possible as he can do. And out to Chris Woods, True Historian, and many more in the chat group, you know. And is it Purple Glitter? Yeah, she come with her little questions and whatsoever. Thank you for all your information. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Hey, listen. This shout out to Chris Woods, yeah. I can play basketball, you punk. Yeah.
You know what? We need to have a USA UK basketball tournament.
As long as they're playing football after that, yeah.
And then they got to play football.
That's it. They run rings around.
But you see, this is what we need to do. We need to do these kind of things for education. You know, having fun amongst each other, doing things together, and able to build bridges. Because the more we build bridges, the more we get to have an understanding of each other. And these are the kind of things of what we need to do. Making our own tournaments.
That's it. That's it.
I agree.
Into circles. But listen, again, for people that don't know, we've been talking with Team Osiris today. It's been the Team Osiris overview. We've had our brothers in, just covering a few subject matters, catching up. For those who don't know, go and find their YouTube channel. It is Team Osiris, right? Your YouTube channel, guys?
Oh, yeah, Team Osiris, yeah. Our YouTube channel is still up, Team Osiris. And, I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if they're my friend on Facebook, but you got Amir Jackson on Facebook. This is just really Jesse and NGOZI. I'm always posting and, you know, saying things and different things on there. Even when I'm outside working, and no matter, going to the gym, I'm always posting. I'm always active. But Team Osiris, we got Brother KHONSU, you know, his page is up. Brother Khufu Makaru page is up. Always giving out scientific information, always doing something. We also have our, you know, YouTube channel. Team Osiris is up. We did a few shows recently. Just type up Team Osiris and you'll see it. It's there.
That's all. Check them out. Be careful, people in them back chat rooms. Yeah, my brother KHONSU is always lurking. Yeah, he'll murk you. Under you. Yeah, you think you're safe in these little chat rooms talking about flat Earth and all of this stupidness. Yeah, my brother will come from the sidelines and murk that. Yeah, so watch out for that. And yeah, now I've bring it up. Let me just get you a quick roundup on this flat Earth foolishness that's going in right now. I don't understand how this has come back into effect, but please, just for the record, all of you, what is your opinion on this flat Earth talk?
I mean, it's completely stupid. I mean, if we understand how photons work and we measure time off photonic patterns, no time is the same the way light reflects in different angles within Earth. If it was a set base or flat, it should be a centered time. And only at the edge of the earth, you can find darkness, curvature, and different things. I mean, when you see the setting stages of how the earth rotates around the sun and the distance, you know, the east coast of Chicago, I mean, the east coast of America is an hour ahead of us. The west coast is 2 hours behind. And we base this off how light or photonic patterns or extend. So let's deal with the measurement of time, and you can clearly see what is and what's not. Looking at curvature at the base or certain things, you know, the earth is flat is really childish. And I don't think it's not logical to me. I think from a scientific mindset, I can't even make sense out of it or try to make sense out of it. You know, it's completely stupid. But again, some people just want to be different. But people got to understand that this flat earth shit is coming from old Europe. Old Europeans used to believe this. A lot of people used to believe it. So, you know, for you to be an African talking like that, it don't make sense. I was hearing a group of people say that the Egyptians thought the earth was flat because they was looking at Geb. But if you look at Geb in the mythology, he's not really on land flat. Nature is kind of lazy. And Geb is on one side of his body and his one knee is up, which represent land mass. And then you see Nut. You see Nut, which is the atmosphere, the night sky. She's curved over in circular form, atmosphere, stratosphere. You know, you can see that through Nut, and you see you see Shu in between. So that you can't use Kemet and say that the Egyptians thought that the earth was flat. I don't even think their mindset was based in reality off that. This is an old Eurocentric mindset. A lot of old Europeans used to think like that. You know, I don't think the African was thinking like that. Even if you study the mythology in Ifa and look at how Obatala came down and created the earth and the universe, and then he created from the chain the first group of people and land and mind. You just look at the way the way they was explaining it, or the Nomos with the Dogon, with the spider. I mean, these people wasn't really talking like that, and they didn't have the tools and technology that people have today to measure, you know, the earth the way we do today. But they had a good idea. You know, the way you see things is circular. The way your iris and your macula and your retina is set. You know, a flatness doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. I couldn't even make sense out of that. You know, just basing it off how you measure things in an angle of how things fall. You know, fall in specific settings. So it doesn't make sense. It's crazy as hell to me.
That's all. KHONSU.
I mean, you know, I've had my, you know, challenges with flat earthers. I've debated a few, and, you know, they were absolute idiots. It has no scientific value, can't be validated. We understand the oblate spheroid that is called the earth is relative to the primordial egg, and that's why you have these circular shapes going all the way back to ancient tribes that used the circle as a definite means of birth and consciousness. So that's just not a coincidence. So this whole flat stuff and all that kind of stuff is silly, man. That's not even worth an argument. Generally, I'm only going to give a flat earther about 5-10 minutes. And then after that, we ain't going to, it ain't going to go too much farther.
Well, again, I got to laugh that it's always Hebrew Israelites as well. That's what's the most funniest thing to me. The more flat earthers that are coming out that are also Hebrew Israelites is where I'm like scratching my head also, like, see, okay. Brother Kofu, what you gonna say? Got anything to add to this?
Yeah, man.
Speak on it.
I'm just saying, like, you look at the moon, the moon doesn't look flat to me. And that's our satellite, natural satellite.
Well, you know what's funny? That statement, brother. I've heard Mandem say to me that all the planets, the moon, the sun, they are orbs. They are light orbs, but somehow we are still on a flat surface. Like,
well, if it's a light orb, during the Obama administration, they shot a missile at it because they be shooting missiles at these planets to, you know, to see what's under there and stuff. So they shot a rocket to blow off a piece of the moon so they could take it and bring it back to Earth and study it. So if it's a light orb, well, how the hell did they hit it? But my thing is the universe is flat. Like, they could have a more argument for that. Like modern science is saying the universe is flat. But that's the extent of flatness that I've ever got out of any scientific theories or studies that has been presented in a logical manner. So I don't know, man. I never even get into that conversation. But to me, it's like actually there would be a place. To me, if the Earth was flat, there would have to be a sign that says, "Don't go anymore. You're gonna fall the fuck off." Like if you keep going, you're gonna fall off. Like if you go to the mountains and you know there's an edge to that cliff, you're gonna fall off that cliff. So why, if the Earth is flat, why couldn't you just fall off it, or drive a car over it and float into space?
And
No,
gravity. Let's not forget gravity pulls things down. I mean, what the it doesn't make sense.
If gravity is pulling things down and the Earth is flat, there should be no water on this planet. It should be all
Yeah.
falling off. It should be all falling off the flat Earth.
come on, bro. There's too many holes in that whole situation. Remember, I'm asking you guys out of humor, but the realness of it is there's so many points to it that they can't deal with, that they can't explain, that they can't readdress how we work out so many things off of the circular nature of the planet and whatever else. That it, you know, as you said, it doesn't really stand up for more than 5 minutes, you know, as far as having a conversation. You know, the best thing they like to do, as we've seen, is bring up NASA and yeah, they're faking pictures and this and that, and but outside of that argument, there really isn't any more substance to it. You get me? So you know, it is what it is. But again, let me just say, big up to the chat room for tuning in. Yeah, I got enough love for MBK, but fuck you, man. Yeah, we can hoop. Yeah, don't ever get it twisted. Yeah, we'll badge you up at enough sports because there's some ongoing chat in this chat room about sports and whatever. Yeah, we smash this thing up. No, we ain't wearing Skechers. Shut your mouth. Yeah, these guys.
But anyway, mind the language, because you know children are trying to listen to this as well.
These guys, yeah, they need.
Yeah, but as I said, it's old men trying to talk.
What? These old researchers.
Yeah, they've still got holes in. Everyone hates Chris with the holes in their trainers. But anyway, let's get off the topic.
Listen,
yeah.
At this point, yeah, I don't know whether you got anything to add, Terry, but like again, I want people to understand Black Eyes TV's back. We're going to be doing more shows to come. We're going to have the likes of Tahaka Bay joining us. I'm trying to get my brother Inky, Minster Inky, to come on with our brother NGOZI and some of the team Osiris to have a chat.
And then we're going to be doing even the we can play the as I said, as they're talking about basketball, we're going to play we're going to have a long discussion with MBK Dialogue. So that'll be our basketball court on Black Eyes TV, talking about the real information and a lot of the information about the Americas and the British and in the dialogues of the trade.
That's it. Go and check out MBK, people. If you don't know, get to know new black knowledge. Go and check out their channel. They're doing a lot of lectures right now. They're starting to get their wind up. Some good information there. Again, pay homage to the research that's being done. Always show love to the people that are spending their time, their effort to go and research these things and bring this information to the people. And again, you know, I love my people for watching Black Eyes TV, Team Osiris, MBK, Sarnetters, Black Magic. It's all good. YouTube's beautiful, but go and read a goddamn book. Yeah, get your research on, because a lot of the things that you're hearing us brothers talk about and whatever, if you don't do personal research, it's never going to be true to you. It's never going to be something that you're going to be able to stand on. Yeah, this is what you need to understand. It's all well and good watching a video, you know, taking in certain pointers, having some references to go and work off of. But again, it all falls by the wayside if you don't take the next step and go and do your own personal research and verify what these brothers are saying, verify what me and Terry's saying, verify what the MBKs are saying and whoever else is up here, yeah? That's the true empowerment path, yeah? Go and research yourself, make it your truth, and impart it to your own household. As I keep saying, society is built from the individual to the partnership with your woman, to the family that you build, onto the village, onto the town, onto the city, then onto the big society, and so on and so forth. So again, it starts with the individual. You know, gotta know yourself. You gotta study. You gotta have some moral fiber about you. Yeah, because again, as we talked about earlier, this whole mad scholar syndrome, but then I've got no moral compass or moral fiber to anything I'm learning, that don't match up either. That's not that.
And you know, and it's not even just about reading a book. While you're reading a book, take notes and go and do your research. There is places to go, places to see. Go to your archives, go to your museums, even go to the hospital and go and check out your doctor and check out information. Don't just talk about it because you just read it or got it from YouTube, but to do your own personal research. That's how you make your own personal judgment. That's why I always say, be black, buy black, live black, think black.
Awesome. And before we sign out, brothers, do you have anything you want to close out on, and anything you want to say to the people before we sign out? Any one of you can take that. All of you can take that furthermore. Kufu, NGOZI, any one of you, bruv. What's your parting words for the people before we wrap this show up?
Man, I just want to say peace and love to the people out there. Peace and love. I got much love for my people. It's just love, man. That's all I want. That's all I got to say, brother NGOZI. And we're gonna keep bringing this information. We're gonna keep doing what we do. But what we need to learn is and learn to have is more patience for one another, and learn to listen more, because we're dealing with a lot of psychological issues in our community, and we have to become natural psychologists for one another, natural counselors, especially to those that is aware and who's responsible and mature. We have to be counselors and natural psychologists for our people, because this is some serious stuff that's going on. The self-hate is real. The personal hate is real. It's disgusting. And I don't think it's nothing to, joke about and play about, but it's really disgusting, So I mean, only thing I got to say is love and have more patience and peace. Team Osiris on the horizon.
No doubt, no doubt. Brother KHONSU, what's your sign out?
Oh, no, it's well said, man. I'm going to defer to Brother NGOZI. My sentiments exactly. Peace to the chat. Peace to Black Ice TV for having us. Shout out to, MBK. We see you out there. Shout out to everybody out there, man. Peace and love.
That's all. Brother Kufu.
Peace to the family across the world. As you go in your daily life, just remember, the first people on the planet, we are the direct lineage of that. And those people, they told themselves that they were the lineage from the stars, from the gods, or, from the supreme entities of which that ancient tradition that they was practicing and studying under. The monotheistic literature is saying God created man in his image. So either way, whether you want to go monotheistic, modern, or ancient, you still are the image of that. That's your royalty. The royalty is in your bloodline. The connection to them stars is in your bloodline. The iron in your blood, them sons died for you to exist. So you have to use that to, as an inspiration as you go through your days and these trials and tribulations and these foreign positions that we find ourselves in. The literature in the coffin text say you're going to be upside down in the land of the West. Now, that was talking about, people say, okay, we know they were talking about people dying, and when they die, they wanted to ascend to the western part of the sky. But, I'm going to just flip it and get a little metaphysical. You could say pseudo or whatever, but we are actually upside down in the land of the West. And so we need to rearrange that and get right side up and be our true selves. Peace.
You heard the real talk there. Yeah, understand your position and where you are in this timeline and in this diaspora. Yeah, it's all about the link up with our brothers and sisters around the planet. And I did like that original sentiment from NGOZI as well. Patience with your brother. Patience and love is the key, yeah.
And be very observant.
That's it.
Because, you have to put that mental psychology in your mind and be the backbencher. Don't be the player. Be the supporter. So you can observe what's going on the pitch.
And that way, when it's your time to take the field, you'll be better prepared. Yeah, you won't get stuck in a quandary. You won't be trapped up. You won't be fooled by fake signs and media people chatting shit in your ears and the latest music video that comes out. Yeah, your head won't be spun so quickly. Yeah, value what's going on and govern your household. Yeah, because that's where it starts. If you can't govern yourself in your own house, by yourself, with yourself, don't try and come out here and talk no deep shit. Yeah, if you don't know how to show your fellow man love and your people them love and respect, don't come out here and try and talk about Kemet and the heavens and astronomical bodies and timelines. It's dead. Yeah. Rule 1: know yourself and know how your surroundings are around you and how to treat them and how to be. Yeah. This is another beautiful show. Black Eyes TV back. Yeah, in your area. As I said, look out for other shows. We're gonna have some usuals from the conscious community as well as some new people.
And I wanted to, before I even forget, I wanted to mention the 4th of August, the big day. We're doing a big Black History Day, and I'm asking everyone to become a tourist. Once again, we're going to have this whole dialogue of a tour all the way from the embankment to Labrador Grove, Portobello. We're going to go to 3 different museums: the Portrait Museum, the British Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum. We're going to be going to Marcus Garvey's plaque. We're going to be going to the obelisk. We're going to be showing you every single history around as much as possible. And we're going to have a bonus, which is the African market, which we're going to have big speakers, people like Robin Walker, people like Oyinka from the Blackamoors, Narrative Eye, and hopefully we'll have people from Black History Studies, Black History Walks. We're all going to have one big hell of a day in Black history.
August the 4th, look out for it.
Look out for that, August on the 4th. We're going to have music. We're going to have the market stalls. You're going to have all different types of people at this day of event. It's time for you to leave your phones at home and attend this event because it's going to be big.
Every time, people. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. You will see us soon. Black Eyes TV on the rise. Peace, 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 peace.
Peace and light.